Well, Mathews is a political writer for the Los Angeles Times, and Peter Mathews is a professor of political science at Cyprus College. Welcome to you both once again. I mean, Seema, Jim Acosta basically sums it up. I mean, the president and all the talk about the military, whether it's bringing them home from Syria or sending them off to the border, you have to ask, is this just political bluster? Is this just about the base, or will it lead to actually a policy shift? As you look at the signs, what do you see?
Well, I think the president is obviously talking about many things he talked about during the campaign. So this is clearly a move to shore up his base, especially in the lead up to the midterm elections. But what we really have to watch is, what does the administration actually do? What do his military advisors, his national security advisors urge him to do? Because there are a lot of questions on all of these fronts. For example, in Syria, if the United States pulls out, does that create a vacuum that allows ISIS to regain territory, or does it allow other nations such as Russia to sort of go in with their own strategic issues, or their own strategic priorities? At the border, there's a real question about the use of, there's a long tradition of the military not being on American soil, doing domestic policy. So is he, the White House later put out a statement saying he was talking about the National Guard, but that's not what the president said during the press conference today. So I think we really have to, while we have to listen to what the president says, we have to also look at what they actually do, either through Congress or through policy.
And Peter, how do you see it? I mean, this talk of using the military, whether it's at the border, to effectively make do for the fact he didn't get the money to build his wall, or whether it's Syria to play to his base, there are those who would say, is he now using the military as a prop? How do you see the president's rhetorical flourishes and Twitter outpourings of recent days?
I think it was a natural outgrowth of the fact he got rejected on the wall. He couldn't take that because his base would get really upset about it. They started loosening their support for him. So now he kind of, let's put the army on there. Let's put the military up the wall. You start with the wall, we have a military wall. And this is something he's playing up to his base once again. It's rhetorical. You really can't trust much of what he says, because he says one thing one day and a completely opposite thing the next day. So you have to go with what he does, as Seema mentioned. You've got to really look at his actions. And we'll have to wait and see. Even that's unpredictable, isn't it, many times?
It definitely is.
Very much so.
Speaking of actions and words, let's talk Russia and Putin. President in that White House press conference refusing to answer the question about whether Putin's a friend or a foe. Also at the same time saying he's been incredibly tough on Putin. That statement had lots of people scratching their heads, right. Seema, people saying, again, the words, the actions don't marry up.
Right. Well, the administration has actually taken sort of strong actions towards Russia, and most recently the expulsion of 60 Russian diplomats. However, the president, and this goes back to the 2016 campaign, he has expressed conciliatory words towards President Putin, most recently when he called him to congratulate him on his re-election, although there are obviously a lot of questions about that election and the fairness of it. It's to the point where other Republicans who sometimes have shied away from criticizing him, such as Mitch McConnell, were saying, that call would not have been the first on my list. And there's also talk of, the President Trump possibly welcoming President Putin to the White House. And that would be a remarkable moment.
Peter, remarkable moment. Can you see that happening? Putin at the White House? I mean, the president says he's been incredibly tough on him, and yet Putin, who at least is persona non grata in Europe, and after everything that's happened in the UK, is being possibly welcomed to the White House, and they're discussing possibly a meeting. I mean, what do you make of it?
I think it's very possible, because Trump is, again, he could do what he wants to do whenever he wants to. And furthermore, if you look back to the election, I think Trump is very sensitive about how he won the election, with a minority of the votes, less than Hillary Clinton, 3 million less. And this charge that he was so close to Russia, there may be something there. Maybe they helped him in some way. And the evidence of some of the evidence that the services have come up with, the intelligence services, that there was an interference. He's very, very concerned that he's not legitimate fully as a president for these actions. So he doesn't know which way to go with Russia. He wants to, some reason he wants to be close to them and work with them. Maybe some investment that he's got from Russian oligarchs and his businesses, who knows? At the same time, he wants to appear to be tough and distant and firm as an American president. So he's caught in a bind which way to go. You can see this, his actions are playing this out.
Although he is consistent in his love for kind of autocratic leaders.
That's true.
He does like his strongmen.
Right. And I think he has argued that he believes that on a person-to-person, on a leader-to-leader basis, he can improve relations between the United States and Russia. And that's something that, he's argued for a long time, that he alone, through the force of his personality, through his charisma, that he can accomplish what basically no other American president has ever accomplished.
Well, we shall see if he gets to take that walk in the Rose Garden with Putin. You heard the president in that press conference basically I don't even know how to describe what he did, where he said ask questions to Baltic media and not U.S. media. I mean, that was a remarkable moment to me, to see a president of the United States take such a move, bearing in mind this country and its tradition of free press and free speech and a free press. What does that say to you? What message does that send?
It wasn't surprising to me because we've seen him do it before in a million different forms. I mean, he believes that a large section of the American media is out to get him, is unfair, is biased. And he says this on Twitter. He says this during events. So it wasn't surprising to me. I mean, it's you'd hope that an American president would recognize the value of free and independent media.
And you think in the presence of other leaders,
right?
You know,
but we've seen this before at prior. It's escaped me, but we have seen this before at prior press conferences with foreign leaders.
Peter, I mean, what message does the rest of the world take from that little exchange? As Seema makes the point, it's not the first time, but I mean, I think if you are watching from abroad, every time you see it, it's still a little shocking.
I think there should be pushback. I think the American press should push back, so should the foreign leaders, because this is totally delegitimizing the American media, which is such an important fourth estate. It's supposed to be the mediating influence in politics. If you lose credibility of the media, then you've lost credibility in democracy, in a sense. And he's trying to do that. I think this president is doing a dangerous thing when he does that, attacks the media in front of public foreign officials and leaders of other countries.
And there has been a history, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there has been a history of prior administrations, both Democratic and Republican, when we're in foreign countries, and these countries maybe don't have the press freedoms that the United States has. Administrations of American presidents, regardless of party, really pushing back to make sure that our press values, our press freedom is valued or is honored in foreign lands. So that's kind of what you expect to see from an American president.
It is, but it's worth reminding our viewers, of course, that the president had that gathering with Sergei Lavrov, and no U.S. media was allowed in, and Russian media were in the room. So I can make the point. It's not like we haven't seen these slights before. Seema Mehta, Peter Mathews, always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it.